So thanks ever so much for agreeing to do this. I just want to kick off with a bit of a broad question. You recently left your CEO role of Sage, and you've of course held a number of very senior positions in a number of very large organisations. What would you say was the biggest single lesson that you took from your experience with Sage?
So I think it's fair to say that the playbooks I learned about in the US in terms of growing global companies applied perfectly at Sage, and we transformed, as I said at the time, a sleeping giant into really a powerhouse in terms of cloud subscription, accounting solutions, and really reconnected our customers to the mission. And the most obvious thing I'd say is as a chief executive and everybody in the company, you've got to have a compelling vision. And we were very clear, the people we served, what better service could you put in than serving entrepreneurs who are building the businesses, creating jobs, creating prosperity for all, keeping rural communities together. These are the heroes of the economy. These are the guys that work 80 hours a week. So it was an honourable task to build awesome technology that allowed them to be transformational in their business, save bucket loads of cost in terms of running their back-end systems and their offices, and really invest that time in terms of growing their businesses. So a lot of lessons there. The kind of one is the lessons of building great companies. They have to be number one, top and centre, to have a compelling vision, how you're going to change the world, and really motivate your amazing colleagues to come to work with a spring in their step and really galvanise your customers on that mission with you.
So we've talked about the importance of having a really compelling vision for any organisation, but how important is it that the individuals within that organisation then buy into the underlying cultural framework, the values of that company?
I think it's really important. I guess very simplistically, if you look at it as a chief executive, you've got almost two sides of a perfect coin. You've got the market, your customers and partners, and then you've got your colleagues. And obviously, where you start is with your colleagues to try and absolutely explain the compelling vision. Good news is they're smart people, they get it. And then say, and furthermore, there's great strategies that allow us to deliver against that vision. And then you've got to operationalise them and execute them. And I always say, A-class strategy and B-class execution is always inferior to B-class strategy and A-class execution. So you want to have a culture, ultimately, where you have flawless execution, fail fast, learn quickly, build the playbooks, find what works, double down on it, and stop what's not working. And then the other thing, I think, especially in 2019, all companies have got to have a soul. So maybe we'll talk a bit more about the whole kind of compassionate capitalism to connect, particularly when you're recruiting the millennial generation, to really not only connect them with a vision and a mission, but also to make a difference kind of for the communities they serve. I do think it's probably changed dramatically, even in 10 years, but certainly in 20. If you saw us back in the 2000s and the 90s, everybody was sort of careering towards kind of value creation, but sometimes doing it at the expense of what I'd call the moral compass of serving the wider community. And I do believe now, talking to many CEOs, that they can serve multiple stakeholders. They can serve customers, colleagues, partners, shareholders, the wider context, but also the communities where they live. And they can take on issues where they care about, whether it's homelessness, whether it's youth unemployment, whether it's disability. They can actually make a big difference to fund, provide volunteering, where they really connect their colleagues with that mission. And I think most great companies now absolutely have a soul. When 20 and 30-year-olds go interview and they'll say, what are your values? And it's not just things like integrity and honesty that are up on the wall, but it's how do you bring the essence of making a difference, building a great company for that compelling vision, but giving back and serving a much wider set of stakeholders.
From a more practical perspective, what are some of the actual mechanisms, the practical mechanisms that can be used to embed some of these cultural values within an organisation?
Yeah, I think, number one, obviously you have to live it, but success has many followers, and I'd say, particularly for professional services companies, growth pretty much cures most evils. So if you've got a core fundamental where you're loving your customers, and I think from the CEO down, I'd encourage you always to be an insurgent for customers. Customer obsession is fundamental. And again, connect to your colleagues' brilliant work and talent to that mission. Deliver very successful projects, deliver very referenceable customers, and then those customers become your raving fanatics. But I'd say that's not enough. because then you've got to say, how do you really motivate your colleagues to say they're making a difference on a much more meaningful scale? So it's not just about making money and seeing the top line grow. It's about giving back, making a difference, filling a gap where we're supporting the vulnerable. And again, I think you just have to embed it and live the values. And, example for me, we created the Sage Foundation. Every colleague of mine got literally 5 days paid volunteering every year. We put notionally about 2% of our free cash flows into the charity foundation, particularly to support women and youth. And then also we gave free software for the not-for-profit sector so they could power their businesses and make sure the donations they collected went to the causes that they serve. And that was very compelling. I actually went around town hall meetings, sort of CEO fireside chats, talking to new joiners. One of the big reasons why they joined Sage is because of the Sage Foundation, because it matters, it makes a difference. And it really is doing a lot of heavy lifting in communities and helping vulnerable communities around the workplace. And people just get energized about that. And I think, in a time where both probably our political leaders don't inspire great leadership or trust, and you see surveys in the US, which is staggering, of the under 30s saying, I think 30% of them don't believe in capitalism. I believe we as the business community need to say, actually, capitalism can create wealth for all, can create prosperity on a much wider platform for the vulnerable. And really, the essence of this compassionate capitalism is very inclusive for your colleagues in your business to really get engaged. And I guarantee, I had some naysayers saying, well, if we give people 5 days paid off volunteering, it'll hit the P&L. No. This pays for itself 1,000 times over. And most of all, it's the right hard thing to do. And it's an amazing way where you can connect the heads of your colleagues with their hands so they do better work for your customers every day because you're touching their hearts.
Is corporate social responsibility and having a higher vision that really stands for something beyond commercial objectives, is that something that is just the realm of large organisations, or should organisations of all sizes be thinking that way?
Yeah, I think I'd always say against the compelling vision, dream big, but just start small, take a baby step. I think it was Martin Luther King who said, if you want to climb the giant staircase, just take the first step. So how would you do it? If I'm running a consulting business in Warrington of 10 people, I'd probably have local clients. I'd probably be able to very easily go and say to them, you do charity projects in the community for homelessness or the elderly or whatever it is. How about we give your colleagues and our colleagues a day where they do joint volunteering and go and work with a local charity to connect them together? Now, just one day in a year wouldn't have, if you're charging £1,000 day rate for 8 of the 10 people you've got billing, it might cost you £8,000 in terms of lost revenues. But the engagement with the customer and the engagement of your colleagues and doing the right thing would immeasurably outweigh the investment that you make in lost time. So I just think with these sort of things, there must be ways for your audience out there to think of ways, how can I connect with that? What do I care about as well? It might be military veterans coming back and trying to get jobs in the civilian workplace. There's always something all of us care about as issues where we feel we can do something for the vulnerable, and you can use your company, your professional services organisation as a platform to make a difference in the wider community. And wouldn't that be a great thing to do?
I know the topic of women in business, particularly in leadership roles, is one particularly close to your heart. What's your opinion on that within professional services specifically? So do you feel professional service organisations, law firm, accountancy firms, particularly some of perhaps the smaller and mid-sized ones, do you think they need to be doing more than they currently are to drive this and really get a more balanced distribution, particularly at the top of the organisation?
It's a complex issue, and it's a moving parts. Now, the good news is technology, speed. I think now everybody gets flexibility in terms of employment, whether you work at home, on the client side, or in the office. There's tons more flexibility than there was even 10 years ago. And, broadband and the technology you're holding just makes all the difference. But again, I think it all comes down to the tone at the top, saying we not only passionately believe in equality, diversity, create a great kind of multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multicultural, where everybody could be themselves when they come into our firm. But actually doing some things that really encourage that. So you could have where you talent spot the best women and then support them with professional development, leadership development, mentoring, coaching. And again, where I've done these things directly in these sort of programs, it's incredible the number of people who put up their hands and say, yeah, I want some of that. And it will take time. It's not going to be like a magic wand where you wave it and things are solved in a month. But you can start programs, but also just inherently, if the chief executive or the partners in your firm say this is really important to who we are and our identity, and we believe in promoting, and set targets for it. You know, in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, we'll have 50% of our top team or partners who are going to be women. And then put a plan together to make it happen. And then absolutely support the aspiring women to take responsibilities, to have the confidence, to have the leadership development, and have the mentorship and the safe space that they can be successful and they can smash through that glass ceiling.
Sage, of course, have played a huge role in driving change from a technology point of view within professional services over the last 2 or 3 decades. How do you think that rate of change has accelerated in recent years?
Yeah, it's incredible. 35 years I've spent in sort of around technology, and it has never been more exciting than now. And back in the 80s and 90s, I worked for a company called Oracle, where we had a vision of creating data ubiquitously around the world. And wow, who would have guessed? I think, is it in the last 2 years, there's been more data created than the history of man and womankind. So everything's accelerating. The same, you'd say 18 months of taking pictures, more pictures have been taken in the history of photography. The speed of acceleration is breathtaking, and it's kind of a time where, not necessarily a white knuckle ride, but we are hanging onto our seats in terms of seeing the merging and convergence of different technologies coming together. You know, now I've invested in some really exciting companies with artificial intelligence, machine learning. Something probably of interest to the audience around Kimball, which is a really cool professional service automation solution, doing things that 10 years ago were done by manually and really inefficiently with loads of errors and loads of handoffs. There is no doubt about it, technology is the kind of new DNA of successful companies. And I believe also when you look in 10 years' time at consumer companies, and we're seeing this now on the high street, everything will be digital, everything will be technology enabled. So the speed is breathtaking, point number one. Number two, you know, partners and chief executives out there, you know, step in. Many of you will be digital natives. You will have inherently grown up in a world that is digitally enabled. And what it allows you to do is build businesses much quicker than was humanly possible even 10, 15 years ago. So if you're looking to recruit consultants, wow, it's a whole lot easier. You've got the world of LinkedIn, you've got all the informal social networks around the world where you can do your diligence on potential candidates and you can accelerate that recruitment process, and you can make sure also people really understand the cultural fit and your vision and what you're trying to do, because they will have done their diligence on you. So the speed of compression in terms of all these different technologies coming together, I don't think there's ever been such an exciting time. And I do think, and it's probably not been talked about very much, where we have had massive convergence in terms of the consumer world. Now we won't have one device that's our watch, it's our phone, it's our browser, it's our everything. It kind of runs our life. And now the underlying software technologies around all the data, all the analytics, predictive analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things is going to be transformational, and there'll be huge companies created and consultancy firms will basically make themselves famous by converging these technologies to be very disruptive in business segments. And I can't think of a more exciting time than being a partner in a great professional services company that wants to disrupt and create the future, whether it's in financial services or the consumer world, than now. And Sage, yeah, absolutely was part of that journey in the accountant space, and going forward, looking to see the accountants to play their role in helping businesses and give great advice to help them grow and get their growth capital and go to the next stage.
So there's no question that technology offers huge opportunity, and large organisations across every industry are investing heavily, as we've talked about, in all sorts of technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, etc. What about smaller firms? Do you think smaller firms need to stick to continue focusing on what they do best, or do you think actually they also need to really embrace these technological changes and place them at the heart of their strategies, just as any large organisation?
I think, I'd firstly kind of respect it, but the world's moving on very fast. Just sitting around here, we've got a Nikon camera, we've got an iPhone, and we've got a laptop. If I'd been here 15 years ago, we would have had camera crews here, we'd have had all these, the equipment would have cost probably, I don't know, $100,000. Today, what, $1,000, $2,000? So that's the reality of every industry segment. For the accountants, there is little value in transaction type services where error checking is the case 10 years ago, but now a lot of that's going to be automated through really cool software technology powered by artificial intelligence and analytics, where you can go to a restaurant with a customer, you can scan the receipt in, and it's all automatically in the accounting system, it's on your T&E system, it's already there. Again, what happened, 10 years ago? Every month you'd have to nag all your consultants to go in and type their T&E in and their bills and stuff and the hotels, and it was just brutal. So the world's moved on. As an accountant, I think the opportunity is, you've got to look at it from a half-full point of perspective. You can't stand as the technology digital bus is rolling down and you expect to stop it, because that's not going to happen. What you can do is say you can get on it and you can think about how do you want to reinvent the services you provide so they provide your clients with even greater value. So I think in the accounting profession, there will still be, incredible talents around advising customers, but the advice they'll want is about how do I grow faster? How do I export? How do I get access to growth capital? How do I effectively redefine the role of the accountant as almost being a virtual finance director? And again, some of the early stage companies where I've invested, we've got brilliant finance directors who come in and give unbelievably strategic advice, but they only work 2 days a month for that company. So from your point of view, there's a different model. Now, the good news is the day rates you can charge and the value you bring is much higher than just that crazy, last minute over the weekend at the end of the tax year, just crashing away and inputting data to get off to HMRC or the tax authority. So the quality, I think, of the work you can do is exponentially higher. The value of it to your clients is much higher. And it redefines your business to become almost a virtual finance director of your client's business, and hugely helpful. And probably just through technology, it means you can double, triple, quadruple the number of clients that you have for transactional services at the same cost base that you're operating today.
So we've talked a lot about the many benefits, the many advantages of technology and things like data and the many opportunities that presents. But of course, all of these things also come with responsibility. What's your opinion on, say, the question of cybersecurity, information security? Is this something that you believe needs to be on the boardroom agenda? Is it something that needs that really high-level attention from the top?
Yeah, I guess we all suffer from cobbler's shoes. So even when every technology company I've worked for, we talk about how we transform the client's business, but sometimes our internal kind of systems in the technology company aren't fit for purpose in terms of 2019. What I would say, I think a really valid point you raise around cybersecurity risk, it's got to be top of the agenda. It's got to be a board item. Most of the companies I've led as CEO, I've introduced it to the board. It's there as a standing item. You get an update from the person responsible and accountable for cybersecurity in the company, and that could be the IT director, CIO. But as you kind of grow, you probably want to specialize that in either a consultant or a full-time employee, because I think many companies will be offering this as a consultative offering to their customers as part of the whole solution. But in your own business, it's absolutely critical. You've got to keep data safe. You've got to make sure you're really effective in terms of the outside threats. But probably in 90% of occasions, it's the internal just sloppiness, where you leave your laptop on a train, you lose your iPhone, it's kind of not protected, it's not encrypted, all these sort of things. There's lots of things you can do to raise awareness, get everybody actually kind of marching to the same tune, that everybody in your company owns a responsibility to keep every client safe, every bit of data safe, and be very responsible and judicious around the cybersecurity threat. And I think I would advocate any business should do that, and you start doing it through training, and then obviously you make sure you have all the things like firewalls and patches, up-to-date antivirus and all those sort of things in place. And then, just obvious things. If you walk around the office in the evening and everybody's kind of gone home and you see someone left their laptop and they've written their password on a post-it note, kind of that's not good enough. That's a recipe, because you'll probably have interns in, you'll have other folks in. So it's just the diligence and the discipline that needs to be embedded into everyone to make sure we keep the bad guys away.
So the question of data security and subjects like GDPR can often be seen in quite a negative light, something that organisations have to do as opposed to wanting to do them. Do you think there's actually an opportunity there for these things to be something of a differentiator? Do you think that they actually offer opportunity rather than just potential risk?
Yeah, I think, again, I would advocate managing partners and CEOs. In my view, this is not negotiable. And if you want a shock and all-sided treatment for your colleagues, then just give them a couple of case studies. Say in the UK, something like TalkTalk. I know Dido, who's a great CEO, but within literally minutes and hours and days, the trust that was built up in that company was decimated effectively. And anybody, we're all as CEOs and leaders trying to build trust with our customers and our colleagues. And it takes days, weeks, months, and years to build trust. But in the digital age, it takes seconds to destroy. So, fundamentally, if you're not serious about it, go and look at a few case studies. Literally in days, if you've worked at building a consulting company over 10 years, in days it could be decimated if you have a major breach and it's all over the papers and it's kind of bad news. Or you're acting on behalf of a client and they have a breach through negligent work effectively. So I think kind of you have to maybe create that burning platform, that shock and awe moment, because then I think then you can say, let's turn this into a positive. Let's make this one of our core strengths, that we know we're safe. We do everything humanly possible to be as safe as we can, because you can't absolutely be 100% totally secure, because you don't know what the bad guys are going to do tomorrow, and the threats changing and evolving at a rapid rate, just like the speed of digital technology. But then also to your customers, they'll want to have that reassurance. When you pitch in new work, they'll want to know that they're as safe with you as the highest gold standard out there on the planet. And I think therefore you can make it a virtue, and then you have to kind of make sure it's real in your firm. You have the systems, processes, training, and the people awareness to make sure that's a reality.
Local government has been under huge pressure in the last 10 years. First of all with the recession, and now of course more recently with the uncertainty introduced by Brexit. What role do you think technology needs to play in protecting local government services in the years ahead?
I think, again, showtime. This is the best time. You look at the technology, whether it's from digital marketing, social media, AI, machine learning, robotics, all these areas, there is opportunity for convergence to create radically different technology solutions that serve the wider population and the community. And I think we all passionately believe in the community. If you go around rural England, the sense of having the pub and the library and all these sort of institutions where people met and communities came together is fundamental. And maybe we've lost that. We're all a bit too busy. So I think invariably what we've got to do from the government, and probably all of us in business, is always do more with less. So we're always looking, in the old days of having like 2 or 3% productivity every year through technology. That was kind of what we got used to as a status quo. Now we can look at radically different, where we can do 2 times as much with the same technology. So I'd say when I was in government, around this area, we looked at 2 things. One is to create platforms, world-class platforms. And I think absolutely things like GovUK, it won awards. When I was there, it beat things like the Olympics for marketing awards, and it was a platform that citizens in this nation trust. 60 million people using it. We had all the telemetry, all the data to make sure it was best in class, and literally hundreds of changes were made according to citizens' needs. So create great platforms. The other thing I think is, and this is very true now, where we want to put citizens in charge of their relationship with governments. So if you're a consulting firm, bid into the public sector, I think there's a great opportunity. And we're only probably a third of the way through this journey, where, back from post Second World War, it was big government doing stuff to citizens. And what technology allows through platforms is turning that on its head and putting citizens in charge of their accountability, ultimately their good health, their family's good health, and what services do they need from government, both central government and public and local government, and the third sector, that really can allow them to live fulfilled lives and allow their kids and their families and their wider families and their elderly relatives to really be nurtured, helped, supported through their life journey. So I think there are huge opportunities actually, and again, it's so easy to sort of lie here and say bitching and moaning about cuts or whatever, but for entrepreneurs and leaders of professional services companies who are listening to this, our role is not that is gone. The reality is digital technology, all the technologies I've talked about, the acceleration of what we can do now, stuff that took me 10 years to do 20 years ago, probably takes a year to do now. Building companies, growing companies, going overseas, connecting communities. 2 billion smartphones on the planet, from a standing start when they were invented by Steve Jobs in 2007. Who could have guessed that there would be everybody who, from the palm of their hand, who could control their life, and as citizens they can take responsibility for their input to the community. They can take responsibility for making a difference to the community, starting their own business, growing community contributions to things like libraries, hospitals, all those sort of things. So I think there is a wealth of opportunity furnished by technology, and this is the golden age where this technology has got to be exploited to the good and well-being of communities, individuals, citizens, families, for the benefit and prosperity of all.
Can small organisations that perhaps have been built on more conventional business practices, more traditional business practices, can they afford to ignore the role of technology in their future strategies?
Well, what I'm going to say is probably not always going to be popular, but I just tell it how it is. I'm a straight shooter. We're sitting here within half a mile of something, Oxford Street, House of Fraser, BHS, brands that have been around for tens or hundreds of years are struggling. New World, Debenhams. So let's get used to the new reality. The new reality is how we embrace technology for the benefit of all and prosperity for all. So I think very specifically, I just thinking about my mother-in-law who's 83, I wouldn't have expected her to be 5 years ago embracing Uber or Netflix. Now she's an avid user of both. Now sometimes her grandkids have helped her out and kind of navigated the way in terms of usage and adoption. But wow, if that's the case, and we can see people from different generations, and how many people out there have grandparents and children who communicate by FaceTime. We just got to realize, whether it's WhatsApp, whatever, it's changing the world. The whole technology platforms, the apps, the convergence of these really exciting technologies create a huge opportunity. So things like, I think the government's really been proactive, playing its role. Ultimately, what we want to do, we want to be living in Britain that's prosperous, multicultural, cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic, multi-religious. It is beautiful Britain. And what it is underpinned by is Open Britain, where we have a talent magnet for the best skills in the world. And they want to come and live in London and Britain and Manchester and Newcastle and all these places. We have Smart Britain, where we have the best education system, second to none. And most of all, underpins both of those, we have Digital Britain, where we have infinite technology, Wi-Fi and broadband at the lowest cost to allow people to really grow their business. The broadband infrastructure has to be really fast, high speed and low cost. And then the skills, it's not just having the plumbing there and the infrastructure. You've got to have the skills, the talent, the entrepreneurs that really understand how to exploit it. And probably all of us could do a bit more there, but if you go onto the web, there's loads of, from Khan Academy through to other fantastic websites that allow you to educate you and the teams that you have working for you to really think about how do you exploit technology to service your customers and deliver more value to your customers and do it more efficiently that will drive growth in your business. So I'd say, it's definitely a case, maybe it's a kind of roller coaster ride because it's all changing around us, but we love as entrepreneurs living in a world of uncertainty because that creates opportunity. So jump on the roller coaster and get ready to take it to the top.